Next update is from Andrew Parry again on behalf of the Patient Safety and Quality Improvement Working Group. Andrew.
Sorry, it's me again. I think this is a very exciting initiative that we have in the society, and one which is actually the envy of many of the specialist societies in the country, who, when they've heard of this, have suddenly said, crumbs, that's a good idea. I wish we did something similar. It's called the Patient Safety and Quality Improvement Subgroup, and it's started off, I understood it to start off as a sort of task and finish group to deliver what we have called the Significance Events Library. In the NHS Constitution, there are two particular paragraphs. It said, you have the right to expect NHS bodies to monitor and make efforts to improve continuously the quality of healthcare they commission or provide. This includes improvements to the safety, effectiveness, and experience of services. And the NHS pledge, the NHS also pledges to identify and share best practice in quality of care and treatment. Our feeling was that this isn't really happening. We're often compared to the airline industry, which some of us appreciate, other of us balk at, but they have a very well-developed reporting of adverse events system, including the ability of passengers who've been on the planes with an event to be able to report into it. And we've been compared to them many times, and there are many similarities. And the question is, if they've got it, is it not something that we ought to be thinking about as well? It all came to a head with an event that happened at one of our centres, where there was the insertion of a mini track. And I think it was being done on the intensive care unit. And the needle for the mini track went into the trachea. And then the guide wire for it was passed. But during that process, the needle came out of the trachea and the guide wire was passed into the subcutaneous tissue, followed by the mini track, which then tore one of the thyroid arteries. And the long and the short of it was the patient had an adverse outcome. And at the coroner's inquest, the coroner stated that one of the outcomes was that they wanted the learning from this event to be shared amongst all the centres in the country. And we thought, wouldn't it be great when another event happens like this, because it will happen in all our careers, wouldn't it be great if we could then turn to the coroner and say, well, actually, we have a process and we have shared this learning already. So this has led to the development of what I briefly call the Adverse Event Library. And what we are aiming to do, the vision is that serious and adverse events that occur in the various units can be submitted to a central bank, we'll call it a library of these events, where they are totally anonymized, both by patient, hospital, etc., so they cannot be traced. And I know there are going to be questions about that, but we have completely anonymized data and we submit it to the SCTS by secure portals. It is looked at by the committee, the Safety Assurance Committee, and they make sure that, one, it merits being disseminated amongst the fraternity. The second thing is it is completely anonymized. And then the third thing is that it's categorized so that we can actually look at it afterwards, because I'm sure you will agree with me that there are so many SOPs that are written as knee-jerk reactions to specific events, which then go on to an, quote, electronic system, unquote. And one, nobody knows they're there. And two, if you do know they're there, you've got no idea of how you're going to be able to find it. So one of the key challenges to this is going to be categorizing it and finding the information and learning from it afterwards. So where have we got to? We have got to formalizing a pro forma, and on these two slides, we've got the data which is going to be on the pro forma. I won't read through it because you can read it as well as I can do. And we have this agreed. We have the principle behind it agreed. We have the committee constituted, includes surgeons, surgical trainee, perfusion reps, AHPs, and lay representatives. As I said, we've got the pro forma all ready to go, and now we've got the sticking point, and that is how can we have a robust system which we can guarantee is going to remain anonymized and is not going to allow dissemination of identifiable data around the country. Well, there are a few issues or potential responses to that. One is that certainly initially, the intention is that any event that is reported to this library is going to be an event that has gone through the whole of an SAE investigation at the index hospital, if not an RCA, and therefore, by definition, is already in the public domain. So there is less of a problem with lack of data identification because of that. But of course, we still want to keep it completely anonymized. So there are the issues of GDPR, which we are working through at the moment. We're going to have to buy in, we're going to have to get buy-in to it from our trusts, which is the sticking point at the moment. And I'm at the point, I'm just having a chat with Emma earlier on today, that my trust has been asking that the what's called a DPIA form, which is the data protection form, has to be filled in by the web developers and will assure them of certain levels of security. The web firm has then come back and asked me, how are you going to anonymize it? Because we can't give this level of assurance unless you tell us it's all assured. And therefore, so I'm sort of piggy in the middle between these two. But we have made progress, and I spoke to indirectly to the web development team, and they are comfortable with moving forward and addressing the DPIA form issues. And so they are going back to Clinton Lloyd, who looks after the Society web, and he is going to help us develop it. And then once we've got that, then I'll be able to go back to my trust with a DPIA form, get it filled in, and then we should be able to go with that. Now, why am I going through this at such length? Is because I think every trust is going to insist that we go through the same hoops to get to this point. Hopefully, that once we've done it once, then it is going to be easier and your trust can be reassured that other trusts are buying into this. So I'll take as much of the pain as I possibly can do out of it, and we will progress it as quickly as we can do. I will, of course, let you know how it goes on that issue. It begs a question, and we have a competing event this afternoon with what's called CORES, who some of you may or may not heard of. CORES is a charity that has been set up for all surgical specialities, essentially to achieve the same. However, although it is not enforced data, they like to collect more data that is transferable, that is identifiable, like ages of patients and geographic regions. I spoke to our trust solicitors about it, and they were not aware at all of CORES. And at the moment, it's unclear to me on exactly how they manage the GDPR issues. Knowing how they do that may be very helpful for us to manage these issues, because I know that that's going to be foremost on anybody's mind when I stand up and talk about this. Everyone's going to say it's not going to work because of patient confidentiality. But we are making progress in it, and another organization has made some progress and are up and running with it. So I am optimistic, nay, verging on confidence that we are going to be able to deal with this issue. But I do think it has an enormous power to be able to help us, not only with this library, but the remit has somewhat enlarged to quality improvement as well. What we're going to have to do is a pilot study. We're going to be one of the groups. Anybody else in this room or who is online and who wishes or is keen to get involved and be one of the pilot centers, please do get in touch, because we will need a few pilot centers to bash out the final details of this as we're going online very soon. As I said there, we've got to get a good means of disseminating the practice and for cataloging it all so that we can all access data, because as I said, there was that thing about tracheostomies. Wouldn't it be great if none of us ever had another tracheostomy issue, because we learned from the experience of that hospital? Similarly, the trifecta valve, if I dare mention it, wouldn't it be great if we had identified that as, hold on guys, there is a concern with this valve, and we brought it up as an issue and a concern, rather than MRHA having to tell us about it, or other issues like that. So as part of the remit of the quality assurance things, and hopefully in the future, as we get more established and we get our primary objective dealt with, then we'll be able to move on and look at some quality improvement things like national audits, rather than just our own little audits where you can get bigger numbers and get more meaningful data out of it. And as I said, I tried this through another organization first, and it was all fine until they changed web providers, and then they decided it was too expensive, and so they collapsed. That was through the BCCA and trying to do congenital cardiac surgery and cardiology, and it folded because of that. But going through that process, then so many other societies said, this is a fantastic idea. We really applaud you for doing that. We wish we had a similar thing. So I really would encourage you. There are problems. GDPR is a major thing, but I do think we've made significant progress in this. I really would encourage you to try and get excited about it, so that we can be really leading all surgical specialities within this country, disseminating the things that we've learned, so not every center has to reinvent the wheel. Thank you. I'll stand here because I think it's probably going to be a question.
Thank you, Andrew. You know my thoughts on this. I think this is potentially one of the most powerful things we can do as an organization, but also as unit reps. I think we're all here to learn from each other. We all have different practices, and whether adverse events or quality improvement projects on the positive side, I think we will all benefit. Our sole objective as a society and as practitioners is about patient outcomes and improving those patient outcomes. And I think this is a fantastic initiative. It potentially was a poison chalice when we talked about it 2 years ago because of the logistical issues, and congratulations to have got this far. It's a great feat. And I think, you know, once it's up and running, the power of it will be phenomenal. And I think, as Andrew said, I think it's incumbent on all of us. There are challenges, but incumbent on all units to provide information for this so that we can disseminate it, good and bad, that we learn from it and improve our patient outcomes. And so I just thank you for what you're doing, and yeah, please get engaged with the project. So any questions, Emma?
Andrew, that was fantastic, and as Narain says, this is just brilliant work. And you know, I think we at all stages of training and work, it's really great to learn from good practice, and also things that could have been done differently. It makes us do it better, and I'm sure I've got plenty to contribute. But what I was going to ask was, and you know, use the example of a trifecta valve, or you know, we could think of another device or another procedure. Do you can you imagine a sort of scenario whereby we are compelled to release details of where that information came from? I mean, can you imagine a sort of public interest thing that forced us to? And if we don't hold the data, then obviously we can't give that information. But is there a kind of deep reservoir that actually catalogues where these things came from?
Well, that's going to be part of the remit of the web site developers. I would hope not, for a number of reasons, not least so that we cannot be compelled to release this data. I think there are some centres in this country in which a consent form involves, one of the lines of the consent form includes the statement, I agree that something along the lines of any significant learning that can be achieved from my case will be used and disseminated to support and advance the speciality. Something along those lines is put far more eloquently than that. And probably, I think ultimately the way that we can get around the GDPR issue is by having that. I am amazed at the different number of different types of consent forms there are around the country at the moment. I've seen a variety of them. And I would, personally, I think it would be a good thing we could move to a national consent form that we all agree with, where we have something like that in it, so that we can fulfill the pledges that the NHS, I mean, for goodness sake, we're a national health service, we should be treating patients the same across the country. And if the government have said, pledged that we're going to have learning, then they must give us the mechanism by which we can have that learning. But sorry, it's extremely long-winded, and I apologize for that. I would vehemently defend not having any information from the referring place sent in. I'm sure they must be aware of it. You just access the web, the society web space, a secure place on the web space, then you don't have to fill in your data and things or where it's actually coming from. So I think we can be, I hate to sound protective about or defensive about it, but I think we may be protected by saying, I'm sorry, we don't have that data simply because we have not collected it at any point, at any level as a society.
I agree with that. I think the whole point is about collecting details that will allow us to improve patient outcomes. We don't need a lot of those identifiable things, and that is part of the process that we're going through. This, as Andrew alluded to, exists in other spheres in terms of the Royal College of Surgeons through their CORIS process. And I've spoken to some of the people that run that organisation, and also the cardiothoracic perfusionists also have a infrastructure where they report this. So I think it's just incumbent on us all to make the most of an opportunity here where we can improve patient outcomes. So thank you, Andrew, very much for a fantastic presentation.